The FBI is investigating this incident as an act of targeted violence. It is unfortunately just the most recent example we've seen of targeted violence.
One ICE detainee is dead and 2 more critically injured after a shooter perched atop a nearby building opened fire at an immigration detention facility near downtown Dallas. Hi, everybody. I'm Hannah Battah. Thank you for joining us here on Fox 4 at 4. I'm here now with Sean Rabb as we work through all the updates continuing to come in from this morning's shooting.
Yeah, here's what we know now is that police first got calls about this shooting just about 6:30 this morning. This is at the facility just off I-35, also known as Stemmons Freeway, not far from downtown Dallas. When Dallas officers got there, they found 4 people shot, including the shooter. The other 3 people shot were ICE detainees. 1 is confirmed dead. 2 others are critically injured. Earlier, authorities said 2 detainees were killed, but they have since revised that downward. Police say 29-year-old Joshua Yan opened fire, striking an unmarked van at the Immigration Detention Center.
Here's the only photo that we have right now of that suspected shooter. This is a mugshot from 2015 for an unrelated arrest. This arrest was for possession of marijuana out of Collin County. Police say he killed himself before officers arrived today as he was perched on a roof of a nearby building.
The director of the FBI has shared this picture of evidence found at the scene of ammunition with anti-ICE messaging. And starting this afternoon, we saw police and FBI carrying out searches at 2 homes possibly connected to the shooter. First was in Fairview, just south of McKinney, at a home in a neighborhood near 75 in the Sam Rayburn Tollway.
The second was a home in Durant, Oklahoma. Authorities are there right now at the scene investigating. This is in a fairly rural area, just a few miles west of US 75. And that's where we're joined now by Fox 4's Stephen Dial, who's been following this police activity as it moved north from the scene in Dallas. Stephen.
Hannah, we've been in Durant, Oklahoma for multiple hours, but we've just started seeing recent activity in the last 30 minutes. I'm going to step out of the shot so you can see what's happening. Before you see the B-roll that we shot moments ago, you see a Bryan County Sheriff's deputy driving down this road. Behind it is a home connected to the suspected gunman in the Dallas ICE shooting. Now I want you to look at video that we shot less than 30 minutes ago. In that video, you see an armored vehicle coming in with a battering ram and other multiple federal law enforcement agencies. At least the ATF and FBI are here on the scene. Moments after they entered the property, we heard a loud bang. Could have been them breaching a door, could have been a flashbang. I don't know because it's so far away from this property. But more activity in the last 30 minutes here in Durant, Oklahoma. Now, earlier today, we were in Fairview, Texas. That's outside of McKinney. There is another property associated with the alleged gunman in this Dallas ICE shooting. There, we actually were on scene when we saw what appeared to be family members arriving, and later the FBI and federal agents showed up at that location. Now, it's a quiet neighborhood, of course, like you typically hear with these types of stories. We talked to a neighbor. Take a listen.
And I went out to check the mail, and I saw Fairview police here and a few other cars, and I, started wondering what was on. And then my neighbor across the street from me had texted me and told me what was going on. And it's just, you're kind of shocked and amazed that it could happen that close to you.
So here back in Durant, Oklahoma, we are, finally seeing the kind of activity here. We don't know, what they may be finding inside. Again, Sky 4 flew high above earlier before federal officials arrived, but now later we can only see what this entrance to this long road is to that property. It's a property and then a shed type property also on the property that, documentation traced us back to connecting it to the alleged gunman. Again, we are waiting for more details, and so we're going to send it back to you guys for now, and hopefully we'll have an update soon.
All right, we'll check back in soon. Stephen Dow, thank you for the update. Well, again, this all started just after 6:30 this morning at that ICE detention facility in Dallas off Stemmons Freeway, right near Empire Central Drive. The moments during and immediately after the shooting were frightening for anyone who heard gunfire. Fox 4's Peyton Yeager joins us near the scene now. And earlier today, we spoke with somebody who was on the phone with a family member as soon as those shots were fired. Peyton.
Hi, Hannah. Yes, we will get to that in just a few moments, but this is about as close as we can get to the ICE facility here off of Stemmons Freeway. We were pushed back all day by Dallas police, but they have been relieved. And behind me, I'm going to have my photographer push in. We do have some Homeland Security vehicles blocking the entrance to this ICE facility. So again, this is kind of where the media is staged right now, but we'll roll on some B-roll that we have been taking all day from the air and from the ground. Now, this is where the targeted attack started this morning at 6:30 a.m. A shooter was on an adjacent roof and fired at the ICE facility and also at unmarked vans in the Sallyport area. We know 3 detainees were shot, 1 was killed, and 2 are in a nearby hospital. Now, FBI is not releasing any information on the victims at this time. We know no law enforcement officers were injured. Again, no law enforcement officers were injured. Now, Hannah, this ICE facility is constantly open for law enforcement, but for some people, they come here for meetings with maybe family members or any necessary appointments. Take a listen to a witness we spoke to earlier today on scene.
Sentimiento porque mi mamá estaba dentro. Uno viene con muchas emociones aquí.
Now, this woman was very emotional when we spoke to her. When we arrived on scene earlier this morning, she spoke to us in Spanish, but I'll paraphrase for you guys. She showed us pictures of that back area where these detainees enter and exit with law enforcement. That back area, we know, is where the shooting took place. Now, this woman, she was here for a meeting with a family member. She got here bright and early and was in a parking lot nearby when all of a sudden, she says she heard gunfire. It sounded loud. It sounded close, according to this woman, and she tells us she heard more than a dozen shots. She says that's when law enforcement and workers here at the facility told her to remain calm and take shelter, and that's when SWAT entered the building. I also spoke to another man. You know, some of these people got pushed back to a nearby Burger King, got pushed back to a nearby Exxon Mobil, where there's a gas station nearby. A man was also here for a meeting, and he was here with his wife and also their child. So we know there was a child who was on the property here at the ICE facility. Again, you know, not involved, but they were here for a meeting. This facility does open bright and early. So again, we know some people were waiting for a meeting or waiting for it to open when that suspect, that shooter, started opening fire from a nearby roof. That's the latest here from outside the ICE facility along Stemmons Freeway. Hannah, back to you guys.
Thousands of detainees go through that processing facility. All right, scary moments there. Peyton, thank you. Well, the deputy director for ICE appeared on Fox News this afternoon saying the shooter fired indiscriminately into that facility. This picture shows the inside of the building. You can see a bullet hole in that framed American flag there. 2 bullet holes. Here's more from that interview.
But what we do know so far is that this shooter was firing indiscriminately throughout the whole building. And so this shooter was at a building nearby and shooting directly into the building, going across the entire length of the building, and then including into the Sallyport, which is then where we're seeing a lot of the focus of the investigation in that Sallyport area. But you saw the photos of the American flag and saw that this punctured into the facility. This could have put law enforcement officers in a very dangerous situation, and we're already dealing with casualties of the illegal aliens. That is a tragedy in itself, and we're praying for them and their families and the law enforcement officers that responded to this scene.
So just to be clear again, it was believed early on in the investigation that the Sallyport was specifically targeted, but you're saying that's not the case. The entire building was this assailant's target.
We found bullets throughout the entire building that had punctured into the facility.
And I think that's an interesting take there, Sean, because in that news briefing this morning with federal authorities, they said without question this was a targeted attack. So to hear that the shooter was firing indiscriminately, it almost seemed as if it didn't matter to the suspected shooter who they were hitting.
Well, and beyond that, this goes to the targeted attack, right? Because the entire building was shot up, as we now know, and we see evidence of that. So this goes to a targeted attack against that facility and people, period. Now, here's one of the things we don't know. Were those detainees in handcuffs? whether they have chains around their waist. We don't know that. If so, they may not have been able to duck, hit the ground as quickly when those shots began to be fired, if they were being moved out at that time. All of that will be part of the investigation that follows, including the messaging on those bullets that we saw, anti-ICE, which is interesting. You would think that I would scribble something else if my message was to ICE. I would scribble something else to them. But anti-ICE is what we saw, and maybe that's his voice, against ICE. We don't know, but we do know those detainees were shot. Still, there's a lot of evidence they have and a lot more they're going to get from the search warrants being executed.
Yeah, there's a picture of those bullets recovered at the scene. That photo released from FBI Director Kash Patel, also convoluting the entire possible motive in this shooting was that poster found on the suspected shooter's car. I can't quite seem to place that in any possible motive that's been raised for this shooting. The sign on the shooter's car reading, quote, radioactive fallout from nuclear formations that have passed over these areas for more than 2 times since 1951. A convoluted message, but that poster on that car of interest that authorities have been searching for and searching through and all that throughout this afternoon. The poster's on the other side of the vehicle from what you can see.
The right rear quarter panel. It appears to be a map of the United States with areas shaded in like coverage areas of this nuclear radiation fallout he's referencing. It makes no sense, and like you said, adds confusion to the equation.
And I think, too, one thing that's worth noting is as much as we're learning about the suspected shooter, we haven't learned anything about the victims. The one person we now know is dead, and the 2 critically injured, whether they knew this suspected shooter, whether they had any sort of connection, or whether this was just some sort of random attack that happened to target them.
And of course, understand, they probably have been interviewed also about this now, but we don't know what country they're from. We don't know why they were detained. We don't know if they were all men or women. We just don't know any of that. They are not invisible people. They are humans who are suffering at this moment, and their family members.
Absolutely.